Hi everyone, this is Warren. Welcome to this channel. And in today's live stream video, we're going to be talking about effective time management so we can find some ways to maximize and free up your time for better piano practice. If it's your first time here, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can check whenever these live streams go live. Obviously goes live. Try to do these on a weekly basis, so keep an eye out for that. Now, today I'm going to be talking about, say, different principles, tools, and strategies that you can use to maximize that time. And I want to start with this. It's like if you listen to a lot of these, let's say, success gurus or whatever, they they have this cliche where it's like, oh, we all have the same amount of time in a day. It's like everyone has 24 hours every single day. And I just believe that's just garbage. Okay. We do not have the same amount of time in a day. What we do is we have different amounts of free time in a day. Okay. A lot of the stuff that they say is just meant to make you feel good. It's not exactly realistic. Okay. So, like I said, we have different amounts of free time in a day. And this is just depending on everyone's life. Everyone has a completely different life than the other person. So we all have different professional and personal commitments that take up the majority, let's say, of whatever our daily schedule is like. So if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you've done everything as possible to maximize the time that you have. Let's say the whatever commitments that you have, that you actually have enough free time to practice. So if this is you, continue watching. If not, then you just kind of have to make sacrifices and figure out how to free up time before even watching this video. So if this, like I said, if this is you and you're watching this video and you have enough time to get the practice that you want to get done, we are going to help you maximize that time today. So one principle that I live by is short-term pain for long-term gain. And this is the idea of just making sacrifices in the short term so you can have a better outcome in the long term. Another way to think about this is one-time actions that set you up for long-lasting results. And this is an idea that I cribbed from Atomic Habits by James Clear. Amazing book. Okay, definitely should read that. So we're going to talk about willpower. And one example I want to give you is, imagine you're at a restaurant. And if you're at like a nice restaurant, what do they usually bring you? A bread basket. So this is fine, but if you're like on a on a diet. So let's say you're trying to maintain your weight, and bread might be one of the worst things possible to eat if you're trying to lose weight. All those carbs. Okay. So if they bring out the bread basket, and if you don't want to eat that bread, if it's sitting in the middle of the table, guess what you're losing? You're losing your willpower, because you're sitting there, you're looking at the bread basket, and you're thinking, don't eat that bread, don't eat that bread, don't eat that bread. Guess what happens? And I'm as susceptible, I can't say that, susceptible to this as anyone else. Like, I've made this mistake so many times. It's just like, I'm going to overcome it with my willpower. Usually it doesn't happen. Eventually I give in, take the piece of bread, and I eat it. So what you want to do instead is ask the waiter to take it away, because if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. What's even better is ask the waiter to not even bring it to the table in the first place. So it's just about eliminating that altogether, where you don't have to think about it. And this is the idea I want to talk about next. So you see here, I have a picture of one of the greatest inventions ever created, which is called a kitchen safe. It's basically a timed lockbox. Like, whatever you put inside there, you can lock it for a certain amount of time, whether it's a day, whether it's a few hours. Over here, you can see you can max it out to almost 10 days. And the reason why I love this is because, hey, what is up, Sarak? I can't say that right. Sarak Zite. Man, that's an interesting name. Nice to see you, my friend. So the reason why I love this lockbox is because I really don't believe in denying yourself pleasure, but I do believe in moderation. So it's just not just like, if a lot of people might say, a lot of hardcore, let's say, fitness enthusiasts, like, never eat junk food, just never eat junk food again. I can't believe I got that right. Okay. I just don't believe that. It's just not realistic. So what I like to do is not deny myself these pleasures completely, because I'm a foodie. I love to eat. I love to, imbibe some, alcoholic beverages in moderation, of course. So what I do is I'll stick it in this lockbox, and it allows me to stick to, let's say, my diet and try to be as healthy as possible during the weekday. So on the weekend, if I want to, I don't always want to feel like doing that. If I want to pick out on the weekend, guess what? I could do it guilt-free because I've earned it. Okay. You could do the same thing, let's say, with video games. let's say maybe you don't want to wait till a whole entire week, but you don't want to spend the entire day just playing video games. You can stick your controller in here, like if you have a PS5, right? A PS5 controller in here. Or let's say even your smartphone, you stick in there because you want to get some work done and you don't want to get distracted by it. You put it in there, and just whatever amount of time that you need to work, you put that in the lockbox. You press the button, just locks it completely. And guess what? Your willpower is intact, because the whole point is like you can't get to it. So it's just you just free your burden. Okay, your mind is unburdened. Like you can work productively without having to think like it's like the bread basket, right? So you put it in there. It's the same thing. It's like out of sight, out of mind. Like you literally can't access it, so it's not a problem for you anymore. Now, there's also an internet app. I haven't used this because I don't really have too much of a problem. But if I did have a problem, this is what I would look into. I believe it's called Freedom. What they do with this app is it's the same thing as a lockbox, this kitchen safe. You can restrict your internet access for a certain amount of time, hours if you want. Like I said, I've never used this app, so I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head. And you can also restrict, let's say, certain websites, like if you don't want to go down a rabbit hole of like infinite kitty videos or whatever. So you literally can't access that. It allows you to work without distraction. If you do it right, you'll be rewarded after it. Kind of. If you do it right, you'll be rewarded. Yeah. So I mean, that's part of the thing too. It does take a lot of self-discipline. Like there's been days where it's like I haven't had a good week and I reward myself anyway. But then when you're really on top of the game, yes, if you've done it the right way, then reward yourself. And sometimes if you don't do it the right way, if you're on the weekend, be like, "No, I actually haven't stuck to my diet. I'm going to lock it and make the time even longer. So I'm going to deny myself," because you have to motivate yourself through pain and pleasure. You can't just like reward yourself for bad behavior. So that you're right about that. Okay. So moving on, let's say if you want to take this idea to wherever your piano is, if you're trying to practice, like your environment, it's like, is it full of distractions? Because if it has distractions, then it's going to be competing for your attention, and that's what causes your willpower to go down. So wherever you're working, and this applies not only to just piano practice. Like a lot of these ideas I take from my personal life, so you can also apply this towards any type of work you want to get done. So it's all the same in my opinion. So whether you're on your piano room or you're in your office space, desk, whatever you have set up, you want to make sure that the distractions are completely eliminated, so you just sit down and you're able to focus. Okay. Now, another idea that I employ in my piano practice, I scan all my sheet music because I don't have to really look for it. Okay. It's a one-time action. So it eliminates a lot of wasted time. Because I have a lot of books. There's a ton of books and a ton of repertoire I'm practicing. And for me to go to the bookshelf and take it out every single time I need to practice it, it's kind of a waste of time. So this is how I kind of eliminate that step altogether. So eliminating steps, we're going to talk about this next. It has to do with making decisions. And the reason why you need to eliminate as many decisions as possible is the same thing with willpower. It's a finite resource. You don't just have infinite willpower. You don't have infinite like decision-making abilities. So when you have to make decisions, it's the same thing. Your decision-making ability is going down. Same thing with your concentration. So one hack that I've heard a lot of people do if they're trying to get ready for the gym is, if they have a hard time like getting to the gym, is laying it out where they can completely see it the first thing in the morning when they wake up. So it's like they get out of bed, they wake up, first thing they see is their gym clothes, lay it out nicely, just change into it and go to the gym. If you want to take it a step further, you can even go to sleep in your gym clothes. Hope you're kind of showered. You don't want to stink up your bed too much. But think about what that does, because if you just wake up, you're in your gym clothes, you've actually eliminated the decision, like an extra step of having to put on your gym clothes. Not only that, like if you wake up and if you look in the mirror and you're in your gym clothes and you decide not to go to the gym, you are going to feel like an utter clown because you're gonna have to dress out of your gym clothes. So if you don't want to feel like a hypocrite, like hopefully that will push you to go get that workout done. That's what you need. And a lot of bodybuilders do this with food prep. Let's say one day a week, they will just cook their entire meals for the entire week. And it's great because it eliminates two decisions, like what should I eat? And then another decision, maybe not a decision, but an action. Like they don't actually have to go through the physical act of cooking. Okay. Now you don't even have to like prepare your food ahead of the week. sometimes what I do is just decide, like on a Sunday, I'm going to eat this on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays. Just even deciding what you're going to eat just really helps to conserve your energy for when it matters. And I definitely do this with supplements. If you see here, I do have a lot of supplements. Some of these are my dogs too, actually. So I have my supplements for my dogs, I have supplements for myself. Like you can kind of imagine, if you open up my cabinet, it looks like I'm a pharmacist. Uh, so instead of having to take out all the bottles every single day and pack them in each day to just take them that same day, I just do it all on one day. So it's the same thing as food prep. I just look at the day that I need it, I open it, I take the supplements, and decisions are done. So you see, I have, let's say, morning, afternoon, and nighttime, and these are my dog's supplements. One for my older dog, one for my younger dog. Okay, so it's about eliminating these decisions so you have time to do whatever you want. So we're going to take this idea later on in the live stream and be talking about things you can do in terms of productivity, like scheduling your time upfront. A lot of tools I'm going to share with you to make it a lot easier to do that. And one way you can eliminate decision fatigue altogether, let's say with piano practice, is maybe on a day-to-day basis, but even on a weekly basis, if you can manage that, is deciding what you're going to practice every single day. Okay, now we're going to move on to tools. And for tools, I like to categorize it as the first one here, time savers. So things that are going to help you free up time, because you might think like, I've done everything possible to max out the free time I have. I'm going to say that's not true if you are not using these tools. So the first tool I have is called Eye Tracker, and this is basically a measurement tool, because you need to measure your time to see where it goes. If you're not measuring your time, then you cannot honestly say that you know where it's going. It's kind of like if you believe you're fit, like you're gonna know your exact whatever body measurements, but especially your weight. So if you're not weighing yourself on a scale on a daily basis, then you're basically lying to yourself. Okay, sip of water. Now, so the way this app works is you just press the button and it just starts to time whatever category that you're doing right here. Okay, and that's the other thing I like as well, because you can define different categories. You see, I have teaching, reading, language study, writing, listening, practice, training, YouTube, business, notes, to do. So there's a lot of categories, and I am going to say that preface this by saying, like, I don't go through all of these every single day. It's just every so often I might hit some. Some of these I do on a daily basis. Other ones I try to do at least a few times a week. Okay. Now, this is useful because what happens over time, you have a record, and from here you can see this is actually from last year. So my work habits have actually changed a lot. I'll discuss that later. So here, this is a week from last year in October. So looking at it, I could say, oh, look, I did about 19 hours of learning and I did about 19 hours of like work. So I don't have to like lie to myself. It's like, I feel like I got this amount of work done. It's like, no, it's just staring at me straight in the face, just facts. Okay. Now, you go down even further, it will be even more specific. There's another option for this app. And by the way, I will leave resources in the description and the comments after the live stream is over. So if you want to check these out in detail, I'll provide them for you there. So you can see I spent about 12 and a half hours teaching, almost 12 hours practicing, 6 hours writing, and so on. So I can literally see what I've done in each category. This is useful because if I feel like I'm not making progress, let's say in practice, or let's say reading or language, I can look at it and be like, oh, it's because I allocated less time to that. So it will allow me to make adjustments either on a daily basis or a weekly basis. So I'll look back at the end of the next week and see, did I accomplish my goal of adjusting my workflow? Okay. And like I was saying before, you can't lie to yourself. It's having objective information instead of subjective, because if results matter to you and you're trying to be as realistic as possible, like you shouldn't be bringing feelings and emotions into it. Just cold, hard facts. Another benefit of this is like if you have enough records, because I actually have records going back for 10 years. Okay. I don't know if I'm kind of OCD with that, but it's interesting because I could go back year after year and I could see how my work habits have changed over time. Sometimes I could see, oh, I had actually a really bad year, okay, or even a month or a week. So it really allows me to just adjust and analyze my work schedule to see, do I really need to change things up? Am I doing things the right way? It keeps me on track. Another thing it gives you is a record of time that you haven't been wasting. Because if you do this, if you've never done this for the first time, when you start to track every minute, you'll see that you are wasting a lot of time. And then when you see you did waste a certain amount of time, then that time is going to become extra time that you didn't even have in the first place. And when you have that free time, you could allocate it more to piano practice if you want, or whatever else is interesting to you. Now, moving on to the second tool is a calendar. Okay, and then all of these two, you can use digital or physical. I prefer digital when it comes to calendar because my schedule doesn't really change too much, let's say on a weekly basis. So it just allows me a default template. So the same thing with decision fatigue. I don't have to completely schedule every single day. So it is pretty much the same on a weekly basis. And even if it does change, I can just kind of point and click and change things around. Now, like I was saying before, this is from last year. So my work habits have drastically changed. But a sample of what I was doing in October, you can see 9 in the morning, I did about 30 minutes of Spanish study, 30 minutes of Korean, 30 minutes of writing, taking notes from books, and then 2 hours of practice. This doesn't completely include everything. This is a snapshot of what my work is like in the morning, or the tasks that I do. And it eliminates, like I was saying before, decision making. So if I just wake up and I see that I have this in my schedule, I can just go ahead and do it. And it also creates pre-commitment. So it's like if you want to go to a conference or a music concert, you can't say I'm going to go unless you actually buy the damn ticket. Once you have bought the ticket, now you kind of thrown your hat into the ring. You have to go. Otherwise, you have just completely wasted your money. Of course, the more expensive the ticket, the more likely you are to go. So, like I said, it's a way to pre-commit yourself to future actions. Because if you schedule it in and you don't do it, you don't plan on doing it, then I don't know. Like you're gonna feel like a hypocrite. To me, like it's just self-guilt. It always makes me yeah, it's like nothing like self-guilt. There's nothing that's better motivator than like self-guilt. Like you should have done something that day and you didn't do it. You can't lie to yourself. You completely drop the ball. Then the next day you adjust and you move on with your life. All right. The third tool that I use is a notepad, and you can either use this as an app, like I said before, physical or digital. I actually tend to have both. Sometimes both of them have different functions, but the reason why you need a notepad, it has to do with a principle from, or an action step from, this book called Getting Things Done. It's by David Allen. This is pretty much the productivity Bible. So if you're really interested in having a more productive life, I highly encourage you to read that book. But one step in there is called capture. It's basically just writing every thought that comes into your head. The reason you want to do this is because this next question is like the bane of my existence. It's a song and dance me and my wife go through every single weekend. I keep telling myself I shouldn't do this, but it's kind of hard not to. It's like, what do you feel like eating, honey? Like, what do you feel like eating? I don't know. What do you want to eat? Maybe this, maybe that. And what it does, it causes this endless loop. Well, guess what? That's also going inside in your head. If you have thoughts in your head that you're not writing down, it's endlessly looping. And the reason why writing it down so much, or writing it down helps so much, has to do with what's called the Zeigarnik effect. And I believe she was a psychologist who was doing research, but what she realized in the research was that as soon as you write something down, you have completely, what they say is, closed the loop. You've closed that loop. This is for this reason. It's also why I do journaling on a daily basis. Sometimes it's just dumping all the stuff outside of my brain. Like if I've had a lot on my mind, just letting it out actually helps me to create the space so I have the energy to do whatever I want. So like I was saying, if you don't do this, your mind endlessly loops on it. And the reason is, if it's a thought inside your head, sometimes and part of it too is like you can't differentiate between a useless thought or a good thought. Like a useless thought would be like, I can't believe what that person said to me, and you just keep thinking about that the whole entire day. Or maybe you said something you regret to another person, and you keep thinking about that. Same thing, you should write it down. But what it is if it's a thought and it's occupying your brain, obviously it's important. So what your brain does is, if you don't write it down, it's going to keep thinking about it because it doesn't want you to forget it. So that's what it allows you to do. You write down the thought, and because you've shown to yourself and your brain that, hey, I haven't recorded something, we're not going to lose track of it, I have a record, then it allows your brain to just let go of that thought completely. You don't even have to get around to actually doing it. uh, there's a lot of stuff that I've written down and I actually haven't got to. It's just a way to just free my mind from it. And an interesting story from Beethoven, what he used to do is walk around with a notepad. Like he had his own notebook where he would scribble his ideas and thoughts whenever he was so inspired. And what's interesting is that if he wrote an idea down that he was going to do later, sometimes he didn't even need to review his notebook. Just the mere fact of just writing it in his notepad helped him remember it even further. And I've definitely experienced this as well, where I'm like, okay, there's a task that I need to do. I write it down at the end of the day, it's like, oh, I still remember it anyway. So do with that what you will. So just a simple tool, but it can completely change your life. Like seriously, in the future, I'm going to do like a whole entire live stream on just like note making. Now, let's move on to the second category, which I have here, and this is time enhancers. So before we were talking about time savers, things to do to maximize and free up the amount of time you have. Now that we have the time, is getting more out of it so you can create more quality output. One way to do this is with focus. Did you know that you have two different types of focus? So I'm sure you've had days where you feel like you're just spot on, and other days where you feel like you're kind of floaty or something. And the reason for this is we have intense versus relaxed focus. Now, intense focus is usually stuff like technical work. If you're doing like your day-to-day job, this might be like inputting stuff into like your database. I'm not a data worker, so obviously I don't know what I'm talking about. But let's say doing like calculations, maybe like some scientific processes, math problems, problem solving, things like of that nature. And in your piano practice, this might be like technique or actual repertoire you're working on, versus relaxed focus, where you're just kind of light daydreaming. Yeah, like what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what word I'm looking for, but yeah, it's kind of like daydreaming. We're just kind of floating, letting ideas kind of come to you. And another way to think about this is shower thoughts, like when you're doing things like washing the dishes, or let's say mowing the lawn. I've never haven't mowed a lawn in like how many years? But anyway, yeah, like when you're showering or doing the dishes or vacuuming the house, like sometimes you get these thoughts that just come to you, creative thoughts. It's because you're in a relaxed state of mind. And in terms of the work that you do at the piano, this could be harmonic types of exercises, progressions, things like that, musicianship, skills, or things like improvisation. Okay, and naturally, what most of the research I've read shows is that it's kind of obvious, but we do our best technical work in the morning, and makes sense because usually that's when our energy is the highest. Although, it's going to be different for everyone. Like I'm naturally more of a morning person, and some people do their best work at night, and then that can flip, that can change over time. So the easiest way to go about this is actually scheduling all of your technical work in the morning, as close to the morning as possible. And then when you get later on to the afternoon or the evening is when you should actually be doing more creative stuff. Because this way you're kind of going downstream instead of fighting an uphill battle. Okay. So if you do like technique, repertoire, like in the morning, ideally if you could do 2 different sessions, that'd be great. But I know that's not really realistic for everybody. But like I said, if you could schedule it, that'd be even better. Now, now I'm also going to have a caveat. Maybe I should talk about this next section. Maybe not. Okay, so I have one caveat about this, is that if you're not able to do all your technical work in the morning, if it doesn't work out this way, you can train yourself to do it at a different time of day, and vice versa as well. And this is something I've had to do because I loved my morning times where I could get all my work done, my technical stuff for the day. But these days, my schedule has completely changed, and I'm just not able to do it at all. So I've had to train myself to do technical work at night after I'm done with my workday. And it is possible. I will tell you, it is really painful. Probably took me about a good month to get used to it, but eventually, over time, your mind will start to notice, like, oh, I noticed you've been doing all your technical work at night. Like, I better make that switch to allow you to better do your technical work at night. So you can train yourself to do it at different times of the day if that's something that's not more natural for you. But do understand that there is a learning curve when it comes to that, an adjustment period. All right, now moving on to this last section of this video, we're going to talk about strategies, and these are different work philosophies. And this is an idea I got from the book Deep Work by Cal Newport. Amazing book. just amazing human being, amazing author. Like if you're really into upping your game when it comes to doing better work, better quality work, productive work, working stress-free, definitely check this book out. So two of the strategies are what I brought. He has more strategies in there, but two of the work philosophies, I should say. The first one is the rhythmic philosophy, and this is the easiest one to intuitively understand. This is basically you show up at the same time every single day and you do the same exact work. It's a lot easier because you develop things into a habit. It creates expectations. You know exactly what you're going to do. Hence, when you sit down at your desk to do the work, it's a lot easier to get into that mode, that flow, if you want to think of it that way. Now, I do this in regards to my morning routine as well as my piano practice. For everything else, we'll go down to the journalistic deep work philosophy, which I'll talk about in a minute. So looking down here, I have measured my blood pressure. Yes, I do that every morning. I have Korean vocabulary, inserting flashcards, a Colmac, which is a kind of keyboard, not a piano keyboard, but like a typing keyboard that I like to learn a little bit of. And morning pages is basically journaling. So this is something I do every single morning without fail before I start my entire workday, which is teaching. And after I'm done with my routine, I will do about a couple hours practice. So I do these at pretty much exactly the same time every day. For everything else, we're going to talk about in the journalistic section. And then over here too, you notice this is what's called a habit tracker. So it's really useful if you have a ton of different activities you do on a daily basis, like I do. It's like a to-do list. It's really motivating, and especially when you see all the chains and the different check marks that I have here. Just continuing on. You see some days here and there where I don't have anything is when I take a day off, usually the weekend. Now, so I'll give you one last example from the book with the rhythmic philosophy. In the book, Cal Newport talks about, say, someone he interviewed who is a professional, working professional, and also a father and having a full-time job, and is also a student who's doing a doctoral dissertation. So it's like he's thinking, where in the world am I going to find time to get this work done? And this is where this idea kind of came from. Is he found out that, hey, if I wake up either 4 or 5 in the morning, he has a good hour of time to just get writing done, where he could do it all and then just continue on with his other responsibilities for an entire day. And I think adopting the strategy, whatever, he pretty much busted out a chapter a week, just showing up and doing the same time work every single day, pretty much solved the problem of him doing a dissertation. Whereas before, like, he could barely manage 1 page a week, and he did like an entire chapter in a single week. So it's amazing the type of progress and results you can get from this approach. Now, moving on to the journalistic method, and this is basically the whenever you have free time method. You just try to get work done, and this is what I use after I'm done teaching. So sometimes I have some pockets of time here and there before I have to get dinner ready because I cook. All right. And then even after I'm done with dinner, I guess that's the hardest thing is like when you feel like you're done for the day, look, you can wrap up your workday whenever you want, but I have a lot of stuff that I need to do. So my workday is pretty much done, like say like 10 o'clock at night. So all the free time that I have outside of just dinner, like eating and giving myself a chance to relax, like that's when I depend on this method to just, and then with this too, it's like you're not winging it either. Like I have scheduled, like I'm going to do this before I get dinner ready, and after dinner I am going to do this as well. So this is where I fit in most of these. Say doing social media content, working on my weekly newsletter, rehearsing for the next live stream, and also working on my website or future products that I want to offer to any new audiences, right? So this works best for people who have an unpredictable schedule. So if you don't know what your schedule is going to be like on a daily basis, this is the solution for you. However, like I was saying before, you don't want to wing it. You still have to sit down and you have to schedule what you're going to do at a certain time. Okay. Like you either do this, let's say in the morning, if you like to just schedule what you want to know in advance in the morning for that entire day, or some other people like to do it at night before they go to sleep. What am I going to do the next day? So you have to sit down. You still have to sit down and schedule this, even though it might be kind of random whenever you're going to do that. Okay. Now, some additional notes, and this is how I work. I use what's called the Pomodoro technique, and this is 25 minutes of work and a 5-minute buffer. Because before I used to do 30 minutes straight, and I didn't like that because what it was is like sometimes something happens and you're not able to do the exact 30 minutes as you please. So 25 minutes for me is more realistic. So if I have 5 minutes of free time, those will add up. So if I do like, let's say 4 Pomodoro sessions, so that's like 5 times 4, right? 20 minutes. So I have a 20-minute buffer. This comes in handy because life isn't always predictable. Like sometimes I'll have to do like an extra shoot off an email or maybe run an errand that I wasn't thinking about doing in the first place. Or, like maybe my dog's like throwing up in the house or something like that. I have to clean up. So it's a nice buffer, and it's a way to show myself, hey, I didn't waste any time. I'm still on track. So it's a lot less stressful than just like scheduling every single minute. And second thing that I do is prioritize. And I do this, let's say, every evening, like when I'm done teaching. That's because you see here, I still have, let's say, I'm doing some Chinese studying, Korean. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different activities. So I have to prioritize because for me, each day isn't always the same because in the evening, I have different amounts of free time. So when I have different amounts of free time, one thing I like to ask myself is, how do I feel in the moment? Like, how am I feeling energetically? Okay. And this allows me to prioritize. So what I mean by that is, if you notice here, some of these check marks are missing because I have to decide, hey, do I want to sacrifice, let's say, not, let's say, studying or rehearsing my next live stream script or working on my newsletter so I can get these done with the whole 25 minutes of the Pomodoro session? Or do I want to shorten everything? Let's say from here, this is what I did on the 18th. This is recent. This is July, right? So on the 18th, what I did was shorten each session. So I pretty much got everything done that day. Okay. So what I mean by that, instead of doing 25 minutes, which is the typical Pomodoro, it was like 15, maybe even 10 minutes. Okay. So it just allowed me to complete everything on this list. And the reason why you want to do that sometimes is just ask yourself a simple question. What would make you feel happier? What would make you feel better? Because I don't think I don't believe in like just grind until you drop mindset. Like you should look forward to your work. And sometimes if you want to be a little lazy, like there's nothing wrong with that because you're playing for the long term. If you have to sacrifice some activities for that day and you weren't as productive as you wanted to be, who cares? Because what if you save that energy and you have a better like month? Like you sacrifice one day of work for having a really good work month. I think that's an easy trade-off to make. So that's what I do. I either sacrifice or I shorten. And now this brings me to the last portion of the video, which is the bonus section. And I only have one sentence for you. Stay off your phone. There's enough research we know out there that that how deleterious, how bad it is for our productivity to have our phone out, or even something like your laptop. Like if you're on the internet, just stay off it altogether. Like I don't really need to say much about it. It's really simple to do, or not simple. Like simple for me to say, really hard for me to put into practice. Maybe I'll do that in a future live stream. All the things that I've done to make sure that I'm not getting distracted. But underrated. Even after I think maybe even out of this entire video, if you do this just one thing, it can totally 10x your productivity. Okay, so that is it for today's video. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure you like the video. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, notification bell, so you see when these live streams come out. If you learned something today, I would also appreciate it if you share this video as well. I'll leave once again, I'll leave all the resources in the description, the comment after this live stream is over. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys for the next one, and happy practicing.